Chapter 2. The Creepy Snake Fetus. My mom was spoiled by a big snake and gave birth to my sister in October. Everyone in the village said that my sister was a snake girl. When my sister was 18 years old, my mom hung a sign in front of my house. Anyone who paid money could enter my sister's room. My sister was beautiful, so the number of people coming to my house was endless. My sister is pregnant, and there are so many men who come to my house every day that it's hard to tell whose it is. My mom immediately had to drag my sister to deal with it. For the first time, my sister tore free from my mother's grip. Her eyes ignited with deep-seated hatred. She challenged, "If you despise me so, why did you bring me into this world, to endure an existence so wretched, neither fully human nor a ghost?" At these words, my mother seized a hefty stick from the room's corner, laying into my sister with relentless strikes. With each blow, she hurled curses. "You vile creature, who empowered you to speak to me thus? You deserve to be slashed 1,000 times. I granted you life, and you neither appreciate it nor refrain from accusing me." I can't recall how long my mother was striking her, but when she finally ceased, my sister had ceased to breathe. With 2 confirmatory kicks to my sister's lifeless body, my mother, gasping for breath, spoke with a harsh tone. "Absolutely worthless, dying so easily. All the years I spent raising her, and I've yet to see any return." After her words fell, she turned a fierce glare upon me and began, "Do you also fail to see why you're holding me back? They are all burdensome losses." I lowered my eyelids, lost in thought. What was there to halt? My sister, I believe, had embraced her fate. My mother, clutching a tattered quilt, wrapped my sister in it and cast her into the communal grave. That evening, our village fell under an eerie siege of snakes. A multitude of serpents enveloped our village. Curiously, these snakes spared the villagers but ravaged our poultry stocks to nothing. Families huddled in dread through the long night. Come dawn, the entire clan, united by fear, blockaded our door. The clan elder, clearing his throat with a harsh cough, began, "Snakes are born and die, and Fong, the girl, is born of their lineage. These creatures demand retribution." Setting that aside, the pressing matter is that Fong died while with child, doomed to become a vengeful spirit. Everyone, if you can spare anything, please contribute, and I will seek out a skilled individual in town to resolve this affair. Normally miserly, these individuals displayed remarkable largesse when their own safety and fortunes were at stake. They eagerly placed their valuables on the table. After a round of collections, surprisingly, it was my mother who contributed the most. With fierce resolve, she declared, "Even in death, she finds no peace. Elder, find someone formidable enough to completely obliterate her spirit." The clan elder shot my mother a glance and stayed silent. It was not until the evening that he returned, belatedly accompanied by a young man. As the clan elder appeared, a wave of relief swept through the villagers. Pointing to the young man beside him, the clan elder introduced, "This is Master Mao Ping. Though young, his expertise is undeniable." Mao Ping remained silent, scanning the gathered crowd with a furrowed brow before darkly pronouncing, "This sin is profound, an affront to the natural order." Turning on his heel, he strode towards the mass burial ground, and we swiftly followed. At the sight, Mao Ping knelt beside my sister's remains. His expression darkened terribly. "Elder, you told me of a snake woman but failed to mention she was pregnant. Nearly at term?" The clan elder's eyes widened in disbelief. "Nearly at term? Impossible. It was surely only a couple of months." "How could that be? A couple of months?" As Mao Ping stepped aside, I saw my sister's body clearly. Her abdomen, flat just before her demise, now bulged grotesquely. Mao Ping fixed a stern gaze on my mother. "Are you certain she was only a couple of months pregnant when she died?" My mother, rattled by the sight, fumbled for words. "Absolutely, it was just a couple of months. How did it get so large all of a sudden?" After a long look at my mother, confirming her honesty, Mao Ping exhaled deeply and murmured, It has become a corpse fetus. The clan elder, brows knitted, moved closer. Master Mao, what is a corpse fetus? Mao Ping cast a sidelong glance at the clan elder. You claimed this girl was a snake woman, inherently malevolent, a being of deep een. Yet you disposed of her in the mass burial ground. What is this place? A nexus of resentment and decay, particularly perilous since the girl was pregnant. Already a vessel of extreme een, she has now been nurtured by these malevolent energies into a being half-demon, half-ghost. A sinister een fetus. The clan elder brooded deeply before inquiring. Is there salvation? Mao Ping stood, brushing off his hands. It's too late for today. I'll perform a ritual tomorrow that should restrain it. Relieved at the thought of containment, the clan elder murmured. As long as it can be contained, that's enough. But Master Mao, what of tonight? What if the snakes return? Mao Ping surveyed the assembly. Tonight, her kin are here to oversee her. The village's young and strong are also present, their yang energy fortifying this place. Master Mao, she's so fierce. Aren't we in danger by staying here tonight? Mao Ping shook his head. No, she hasn't fully come into being yet. Moreover, extreme yang dominates een. She should be the one to fear you, a gathering of vigorous young men. Mao Ping's words eased everyone's fears. That evening, I remained alone beside my sister's body. My mother and the rest stayed well away, anxious to avoid misfortune. Half in a daze, I listened to their lively banter. Have you noticed? This Fong girl looks even more beautiful in death. Look at that complexion, pale with a rosy glow. I've never seen such a stunning woman. Others spurred each other on. You've noticed too? I thought my eyes were deceiving me today. TSK, TSK. Their lewd comments filled my ears. Fury coursed through me. My sister was dead, yet subjected to this disgrace. Yet, conditioned to silent suffering and too frightened to object, I could only silently pray for the night to swiftly pass. If you're all so tempted, why not give it a try? You hardly acted saintly while she was alive. My mother's voice rang out. My eyes widened in shock. Was my mother actually inciting them to defile my sister's corpse? Under the moonlight, I saw a group of men, their eyes feverish, egged on by my mother. My mother proclaimed, "What's there to fear? Didn't the master say? Yang Chon Kuersin." With so many robust men here, consider the yang energy. We might not even need that ritual tomorrow. Hearing this, the village bachelor, Daju, slapped his thigh and laughed. That's sound reasoning. Daju led the way toward my sister. In response, I quickly lay atop her body to protect her. But Daju, muscular and forceful, muttered curses as he effortlessly hoisted me up and flung me down at my mother's feet. Control your little rabbit. Don't let him disrupt the brother's enjoyment. My mother viciously kicked me twice. Then, stepping on my face, declared, "Settle down, don't worry. He came from my own womb. If he dares to interfere, I'll end him myself." With Daju leading, the others abandoned their scruples. In despair, I watched them advance one by one towards my sister. What was supposed to be a respectful vigil had morphed into their wanton debauchery. They only dispersed as the dawn began to pale, leaving behind my sister's desecrated body. My mother removed her foot, spat fiercely at me, and hissed, "You don't recognize your own kin, do you? You emerged from my belly, yet you defend that dead weight. Listen, if you utter a word about tonight, I will kill you." With that, she turned and walked away. After she left, I numbly stood and staggered toward my sister. Staring at her exposed, defenseless body, I thought I saw a smile on her lips, a defiant smile. I rubbed my eyes, trying to see it more clearly, but the smile on my sister's lips faded. I lowered my head. Surely, I had been mistaken. How could she smile, having never known joy in life and after such profound humiliation in death? I shed my own garments and tenderly arrayed my sister's remains in them, murmuring, "Sister, these clothes are threadbare, but scorn them not. They shield better than bare skin. With the break of day, Mao Ping and the tribal elder reached the disordered gravesite. Mao Ping paced a solemn circle around my sister's corpse, paused to gently press her abdomen, and whispered, "How peculiar! Despite the robust vigil last night, the Yin energy feels intensified, her belly even more distended than before." Abruptly, his gaze snapped to us, his face shadowed with suspicion, and he demanded, "Did anything out of the ordinary transpire last evening?" The Night Guardians, having conspired on their version of events, collectively shook their heads in denial. Mao Ping's gaze fell on me again, his voice tinged with suspicion. Was there truly nothing out of the ordinary last night? I barely parted my lips to respond when I caught the stern warning in my mother's eyes. With a heavy heart, I insisted there was nothing. Though Mao Ping looked doubtful, he refrained from pressing the issue. My mother, masking her intent with a veneer of cheerfulness, approached and said, "Master Mao, the night wanes. Please expedite the ritual to quell this unrest. Ideally, shatter her base spirit so thoroughly that it dissipates entirely. Name your price and I will pay." Momentarily caught off guard, Mao Ping hesitated, then responded with a weary shake of his head. "Perhaps she never wished for this life. We are sprung from the same root. Why rush to such bitter extremes? One cannot choose their birth, can they?" My mother remarked with a casual disregard. "Master Mao, your words elude me. But remember, I birthed this miserable soul. Thus I reserve the right to decide her destiny. Ensure her spirit is thoroughly obliterated, and name your price. I will pay." Mao Ping regarded my mother with a penetrating gaze before shaking his head, choosing silence over speech. He had us encircle the chaotic gravesite with locust trees. While everyone busied themselves with the task, I approached Mao Ping, seeking clarity. "Why the trees? Do you intend for my sister's spirit to be utterly dispersed?" Mao Ping fixed me with a steady look before responding. "Do you not desire your sister's spirit to be dispersed?" I shook my head, asserting, "No, she lived a life free of malice, constantly at the mercy of others. Why then? Why should she be subjected to further torment even in death?" Mao Ping gave me a profound look, whispering, unexpectedly, "There are still souls of goodness out there." He caressed my head and reassured, "Fear not, the innocent should not endure such fates. The world must abide by the laws of karma." Removing his prayer beads, Mao Ping placed them into my hands, instructing, 7 days. If it's possible to leave this place within that time, do so. If not, cling to these beads." My eyes gleamed as I fixed my gaze on Mao Ping. "Are you suggesting?" Mao Ping simply shook his head, fell silent, and without another word, moved away to oversee the tree planting efforts. After the planting, Mao Ping had a striking red coffin brought forth. The clan elder, eyeing the red coffin, edged closer to Mao Ping and queried, "Master Mao, are we to use a red coffin for her burial?" Mao Ping replied without hesitation, "The red coffin will stand upright in the burial. Her spirit is too darkly potent. Ordinary methods won't suffice to contain it." The elder appeared troubled. "But such a coffin portends grave danger. It could provoke the corpse to transform. Isn't it possible to simply disperse her spirit?" Mao Ping offered the elder a measured glance and remained silent. He proceeded to direct the placement of my sister's body into the coffin. Once secured, Mao Ping had the coffin stood upright and drew a blood sigil upon it, then breathed a sigh of relief. Mopping his brow, Mao Ping proclaimed, "It is done. Yet, be vigilant for the next 7 days. Ensure no outsiders venture up the mountain." A voice from the crowd, driven by curiosity, asked, "What happens if outsiders do come?" Mao Ping's face turned grave. Should outsiders disturb her, the consequence would be fatal for all. Upon issuing his stern warning, the assurance from the crowd was unanimous. Before leaving, Mao Ping laid a hand on my shoulder, looking intently into my eyes. "Guard the beads I entrusted to you carefully. And know this, I discern right from wrong, and harbor no ill will towards your sister. The only one I trust here is you, Mao Ping declared. If any outsiders come to the village in the next few days, you must find a way to inform me. Otherwise, someone who knows what to look for might uncover the truth and irreversibly scatter your sister's spirit. I looked at Mao Ping with a deep sense of responsibility and nodded earnestly. But how can I reach you? I don't know where you live. That's easily solved, Mao Ping responded, pulling out a candle from his coat and passing it to me. Light this candle if anyone approaches, and I'll be alerted. I carefully placed the candle Mao Ping handed me into my pocket and affirmed. Understood. After Mao Ping's departure, our village experienced 2 days of serene calm. No further peculiar incidents like serpents invading occurred. The villagers finally felt at ease. Additionally, the married women of the village began to show signs of pregnancy one after another. The local clinic was crowded, bustling with long lines of villagers engaged in cheerful, glowing conversations. That snake woman was nothing but trouble. Look at me. No news for ages, and just 3 days after she passed, I'm expecting, one exclaimed. How true, another agreed. From time to time, my mother would add, if I'd known her death would bring such fortune, I'd have done it much sooner. Why did we ever wait? My mother received widespread acclaim from the villagers, who praised her for her tough but necessary decision. Each day, she walked through the village with a proud, radiant demeanor, her head held high, basking in her role as a moral paragon. She was the very image of a proud peacock. In silence, I observed them, marveling at their folly. How could it be that all the village women were simultaneously pregnant and yet none sensed anything untoward? For days following my sister's demise, a monk made his way into our village. He crouched at my doorstep, requesting a sip of water. I bade him wait, then hastened to the kitchen to fetch a bowl of water for him. Once the monk had quenched his thirst, I confronted him. Why choose my home to seek water? The village clan elder claims that wandering monks do not form ties without cause. So why come to my door? What is it you seek? Or perhaps, what is it you wish to uncover? After my words had been spoken, the monk regarded me with astonishment. Unexpectedly, such a young man holds remarkable insight. I lowered my head, speaking somberly. You need not treat me like a child. My experiences rival any adult's. Feel free to ask me anything. No one else in this village will offer you the truth. The monk placed his water bowl aside, pressed his palms together, and intoned a sacred Buddhist phrase. This village was not on my intended path. Yet, as I passed, the air thick with malice caught my attention. I could not stand idly by as innocence might perish, compelling me to pause and uncover the truth. I faced the monk. Why then did you choose to solicit alms specifically at my house? Gazing into my eyes, the monk responded. Could it be that your home, heavy with sorrow, has recently been touched by death? Yes, I murmured, bowing my head. My sister was brutally slain by our mother mere days ago. The monk paused to reflect. Murdered by her own flesh and blood. A tragic end indeed. Was she merely an ordinary woman? I shook my head. No. She was known throughout the village as a snake woman. A flicker of comprehension crossed the monk's face. That makes sense. I had been puzzled by the presence of what seemed like snake fetuses in every woman here. A snake fetus, is it? Initially, all I noticed was that their stomachs seemed abnormal, but the specifics eluded me. This monk has now shed light on my confusion. Suddenly, the monk gripped my hand tightly. Young man, where is your sister interred? We must hurry there. Time is of the essence. A snake fetus gestates in a day and erupts in 3. We must act swiftly, or all will be lost. I met his gaze steadily for a long moment before breaking his hold. I declared, Monk, do you believe in retribution for wrongdoing? The monk affirmed with a nod. Indeed, that is just. I persisted. Therefore, I cannot lead you to her. You inquired only about the deceased and her manner of death. but you failed to probe the reasons behind my sister's demise. Each person here contributed to my sister's demise. They owe her a reckoning. People seek aid at their lowest points, but imagine the despair when there is no one to turn to. Do you grasp that, monk? This community, indifferent and selfish, never once showed compassion for my sister or me. So why should I now assist you, stand against my sister, and deliver them? After my words, the monk stood petrified. Dismissing him, I retreated into my home. One should not counsel kindness without bearing similar burdens oneself. I assumed this episode had concluded. Unexpectedly, however, the monk reappeared the next day, disheveled and desperate at my doorstep. He confessed, "I sought to view your sister's body, yet no villager would guide me, and their agitation was palpable." I snorted coldly. The villagers' blind veneration for Mao Ping was well known. He had sought to visit my sister's burial site. Surprising they hadn't attacked him, let alone guide him there. Reluctant to engage, I was about to shut the door when the monk clung to my arm, insisting, "My visit today is driven not just by their needs, but by a duty to your sister." I furrowed my brow. "For my sister? Explain." Between clenched teeth, the monk revealed. "Today, though none led me to her burial, I ascertained the details of her interment. Child, are you aware? The locust tree, known for its dark allure, a serpent's fetus, a red coffin erected, encircled by such cursed timber. It spells necromancy. Necromancy." A chill ran through me. I pressed. "And should this necromancy succeed, what then?" Each word heavy with foreboding, the monk declared, "It escapes reincarnation, transforming utterly into a sinister instrument of death. It's 1,000 times worse than death itself." The monk's words left my mind reeling. I couldn't bear the thought of my sister suffering any further, yet my trust in his words wavered. Impatient, the monk stamped his foot. "Why the hesitation? Have you ever pondered why your sister was termed a snake woman?" I met his gaze with confusion. Why? Why indeed was my sister branded thus? And more perplexingly, why had my mother, who so clearly detested her, chosen to bring her into the world? The monk fixed me with a penetrating look and declared, "I might be mistaken, but I believe this has been a ruse from the outset. Your mother must have had compelling reasons to birth your sister, driven by either coercion or lure. It certainly wasn't her choice. Perhaps from the moment your mother conceived, there were designs to utilize your sister in some dark ritual, or even her conception was manipulated." The implications made me shudder. Certainly, my mother had compelling reasons. Noticing my hesitance lessen, the monk pressed on. "If doubts linger, confront your mother directly. You're a strong young man. If you earnestly seek answers, she will find it hard to conceal the truth from you. However, if you're still tethered by conventional notions of filial piety, consider my words unsaid. It's tragic, your sister, never truly free in life, and now, not even in death. Are you insinuating I resort to violence against my mother to force her truth?" The monk merely shook his head. "I've said no such thing. Yet, remember, time waits for no one." With resolve hardening, I bit down on my lip and told the monk, "Wait here." I spun on my heel, sprinted into the kitchen, snatched the cleaver from the block, and hastened to my mother's room. She was deep in a midday slumber, which I abruptly ended. Her initial reaction was to berate me, her hand raised in anger. Yet the sight of the cleaver in my grip silenced her instantly. Her response left a chill of sorrow in my heart. My sister and I bared our souls to her, yet those heartfelt efforts proved less effective than the mere threat of a kitchen knife. It is true, love cannot tame the beastly. If only I had embraced this harsh resolve sooner, my sister might still be with us. But now is not the moment for such reflections. I pressed the kitchen knife firmly against my mother's throat, my eyes burning fiercely into hers. "Explain why you had to bring my sister into this world. Speak, or I swear I'll end us both here and now." Perhaps it was my daunting presence, unlike anything she had witnessed before, that utterly petrified her. She divulged the entire story without a second thought. My mother recounted that upon discovering she was pregnant with what she described as a serpent spawn, her immediate impulse was to abort. It represented her disgrace. But as she made her way to the hospital, a figure cloaked in black halted her progress. The man briskly took out several gold bars and tossed them to my mother, instructing her to bear the child she carried. He declared, "Just raise her till she turns 18. After that, feel free to end her life as you see fit." Blinded by the luster of the gold, my mother hastily agreed. After detailing the events, my mother spitefully added, "That wretched girl has ruined my entire life. Her death would be too kind. She should thank me for granting her this passage through the world." I laid down the kitchen knife I was holding and gazed mournfully at my mother. "No one coerced you into birthing my sister. Your own greed was the clear motivator. Furthermore, if given the choice, I'm certain my sister would have never chosen to endure such a brief, cursed existence." After I finished speaking, I stopped looking at my mother and dashed towards the door. The monk, sitting by the doorway, had an expression of deep understanding. Was I correct? I dropped my gaze. Yes, it was all premeditated. You've hit the mark. I'll lead you to the mass burial site. I failed to protect my sister during her life, and now, even at the cost of my own life, I won't allow her to be manipulated as a puppet. The monk stood, brushing off his robes. Let's make haste while the daylight is still with us. At the mass burial site, the monk strode directly to my sister's coffin. With a squint, he scrutinized the blood-painted talisman crafted by Fong. "This is a talisman to preserve corpses." Indeed, my suspicion was correct. I faced the monk and inquired, "What do we do now?" Engrossed with the coffin, his hands caressing its surface, his face a mask of inexplicable zeal, he initially disregarded me. Only after I called out several times did he return to the moment, saying, "Step aside, I am about to open the coffin." Yet, despite his determination, his efforts to push the coffin were futile. It remained immovably sealed. Panting heavily, he conceded, "It's no use. It can't be opened. The stench of decay is overpowering. The decay has fused the coffin shut. It won't budge. What should we do?" I pressed. After a moment of contemplation, the monk looked me in the eye and suggested, "This coffin, steeped in profound yin and cold, can only be countered by something of equally intense yang and strength. The blood from the tip of a virgin boy's tongue possesses such properties. Try spitting some onto the coffin." Blood from my tongue tip? I hesitated. Seeing my reluctance, the monk grew frantic, urging me on. "What are you waiting for? Hurry. Do you truly want your sister to remain unrest?" With a solemn gaze at the monk, I bit my tongue and fiercely spat a mouthful of blood towards the coffin. Yet, unexpectedly, the blood had no effect. The coffin remained resolutely closed. The monk whispered in disbelief, "Impossible, why didn't the pure yang blood from the tongue tip work? What is really going on here?" From the side, I mumbled to the monk, my words barely coherent. "Is there perhaps an error here? Might you reconsider?" The monk drew a deep breath and queried, "How many days since your sister's demise?" 6 days since she passed. 5 since her burial." Relief softened the monk's expression. "The 5th day post-burial, meaning tomorrow night, marks the 7th day. The spell to preserve the corpse concludes the day after. We have time, fortunately. Everything remains within reach. Child, I must review some texts to ascertain exactly what's occurring. I'll return by tomorrow night at the latest. Meanwhile, keep our efforts to open the coffin to yourself." I nodded affirmatively at the monk. "You have my trust. You truly seek my sister's good, and I will tell no one." Descending to the village at dusk, I was astounded to see that the bellies of the women strolling through the streets had grown distended. I was taken aback. Hadn't their pregnancies just been confirmed yesterday? How could their bellies swell to appear as if they were in the late stages of pregnancy overnight? Suddenly, the monk's earlier words struck me. "Serpent offspring forms in a day, bursts forth in 3. Today being the second day meant that tomorrow the serpents, not mere children, in their bellies would violently emerge. The thought sent a shiver through me. If that is indeed the case, then perhaps it isn't all that terrible. How do those who lack any shred of mercy, the truly heartless, deserve to live well? Upon returning home, I found my mother visibly tense, shrinking back as she watched me warily. I gave a bitter laugh and paid her no heed. Decades of affection and reverence proved less effective than a knife at her throat. Love, it appears, is the cheapest commodity in the world. That evening, I experienced a rare, restful night's sleep. Drifting off with anticipation for what the next day would bring was surprisingly pleasant. The next day, I was jolted awake by continuous screams. I dashed outside to find snakes everywhere, coiling along the streets, clinging to walls, their convolutions a frenetic dance. Countless women lay beside the road, snakes as thick as thumbs relentlessly emerging from their abdomens. These women could not die. They merely gazed on helplessly, their eyes wide with horror. The men, wielding tools, kept a distant watch, completely detached from their wives' fates. I had braced for chaos, but the scale of the horror was unimaginable. Caught off guard, I watched as the snakes flooded towards my feet. As I stood frozen, unsure of my next move, the snakes recoiled as if electrified upon making contact with me. It seemed I possessed something that filled them with profound fear. What could it be? I racked my brain, and then it came to me, the bead necklace Maoping had given me. In haste, I drew the necklace from my pocket. As the snakes glimpsed the beads, they withdrew even further from me. Could it indeed be the beads? That made things considerably simpler. Clutching the bead string, I circled my house and soon discovered my mother besieged by a mass of snakes. I hastened to her side and dispersed the snakes. Visibly frightened yet touched upon seeing me, my mother cried, "I knew my efforts in raising you were not wasted." With a cold laugh, I remained silent, tore the string of beads in half, and handed one portion to her, urging her to keep it safe and wait for me at home. I clutched the remaining beads and sprinted toward the chaotic burial mounds without a backward glance. Upon my evening return to the village, I was greeted by a landscape littered with corpses. With my hand over my nose, I maneuvered past the bodies and made my way home. No sooner had I reached home than I eagerly lit the incense Fong had presented to me. Bored out of my mind, I mused. Fong and the monk would likely arrive at similar times, wouldn't they? And indeed, as I had foreseen, they arrived together. Among the astute, few words are necessary. A mere exchange of glances sufficed for them to comprehend each other's intentions. Fong offered me a gesture of thanks with cupped hands. "Thank you, young friend, for your timely word. Otherwise, my efforts would have been in vain." I watched Fong with a frown. "Are your plans about to fall through? So, it's true. You aim to use my sister's body for your dark arts." Fong chuckled. "Yes, I intend to use your sister's remains for necromancy, but I will also avenge her. By tomorrow, this entire village will be decimated, transforming it into a veritable inferno. Is this not what you sought?" At that moment, the monk realized that I had alerted Fong The monk gazed at me, perplexed. "Why? Do you truly wish to witness your sister becoming a puppet, condemned and lost forever, with no hope of salvation?" I looked back at the monk. "I don't. But your gaze upon my sister is filled with such greed and frenzy. I find it impossible to believe you harbor no hidden intentions towards her. I can't prevent what may come, but I trust neither of you. I refuse to be the helpless prey." "Amitabha." The monk uttered the sacred name, his eyes shadowed and opaque. "Do you wish for us to engage in conflict like the proverbial sandpipers and clam, hoping to gain from our strife?" I shook my head. "No, my desire is for both of you to perish. Both of you covet something from my sister, and your presence is a blight. Therefore, I wish for your end." Fong scoffed derisively. "Just you." "No," I responded firmly. "I act with my sister's backing." Right after my words, my sister slowly made her entrance through the doorway. The monk's eyes widened. his face etched with disbelief as he watched my sister approach. How could you? It's not yet the day to break your coffin. How did you escape? My sister remained silent, her chuckle eerie in the stillness. I interjected. You taught me the method to escape early, remember? My blood, rich and yang, should surely ward off the Yin creatures. The only explanation is that the blood I spat onto the coffin wasn't from the tip of my tongue. The monk stared at my sister, his eyes wide with fear. Fong Ping's expression darkened as he muttered, "A misstep, and I failed to control her." After a shared glance, the monk and Fong Ping attacked my sister. Yet, with a mere flutter of her sleeve, she sent them sprawling to the ground, immobilized. Fong Ping spit blood, his pupils shrinking. Impossible, you only dwelled at the corpse-preserving site for 6 days. How could you possess such power? It's inconceivable, utterly illogical. I squatted before Fong Ping, narrating each detail of the indignities my sister had faced that night. Fong Ping gazed at my sister, aghast. So it is the merger of utmost yin and yang, that's why she's so formidable. Now I understand. Retreating, Fong Ping's eyes conveyed his desperation. Don't kill me. I only saw your sister's body as a perfect puppet. But I didn't succeed. Please don't kill me. I eyed Fong Ping with suspicion. Weren't you responsible for my mother's affliction with a snake fetus? Fong Ping shook his head vehemently. No, it wasn't me. I was only summoned here by the clan elder. Not Fong Ping? Then who else? Someone who had plotted for nearly 2 decades would surely not miss out on the fruits of their scheme. If not Fong Ping, then it must be. Slowly, I turned towards the monk. It was you, wasn't it? The monk opened his mouth but remained silent, effectively confirming it. The person who had inflicted 20 years of suffering on my sister was, shockingly, the monk. Armed with the truth, my sister chuckled as she stepped closer to the monk. Her laughter echoed as blood tears streaked her face. I watched in horror as she methodically tore into the monk, reducing him to skeletal remains. After the monk's demise, my sister's gaze shifted to Fong Ping. Sister, I interjected. Grant Fong Ping a swift end. His gift of the Buddhist beads saved my life. Let him go quickly. With a detached nod, my sister briskly twisted Fong Ping's neck. Having dealt with the monk and Fong Ping, we then pushed open the door to my mother's room. At that moment, my mother, shivering under a blanket, instinctively cursed upon seeing my sister, branding her a jinx and a curse. Her curses tapered off as my mother's voice grew weaker. She must have remembered that my sister had already passed away. Step by step, my sister advanced towards her. In terror, my mother backed into a corner, shrieking, begging me to save her. I shook my head. Truth be told, I had long wished for her death too. This morning's rescue was merely to enable my sister to deliver the final blow. After my mother's demise, my sister looked at me intensely, then departed. I knew her plans and chose not to follow. Throughout the night, the village was haunted by chilling screams and desperate pleas. It was enduring a massacre all its own. By morning, I doubted any would be left alive. As daylight approached, my sister returned slowly. At that time, I was sorting through valuable items in our home. I halted as my sister entered. Sister, the village is devoid of life now. I'm thinking of moving to the city, but I promise to return to visit you. My sister shook her head, and before I could grasp her intent, her hands clasped around my neck. In the final moments as my breath ceased, tears of blood streamed down her face. She whispered, "Life is too harsh, don't leave. Stay with me."